Hello students, welcome to Biotech Academy. So after talking about protein folding and misfolding, let's now discuss about the solubilities of the proteins, how these protein molecules are categorized into different groups and their function in general. So first let's talk about solubility. So the solubility of the proteins in aqueous solution varies considerably with the external environment and it varies according to the given set of conditions in which those protein molecules are solubilized into. So the various factors which affect the solubility of the proteins. So various factors which affect the solubility of proteins are: first is pH, second is the ionic strength of the solution, then third is the nature of the solvent. So pH, ionic strength of the solution, ionic strength, nature of the solvent, and then temperature. So these are some of the factors which govern the solubility of the proteins in solution, and we'll discuss each of the points in detail. So starting with the first point, which is the effect of pH, how the pH of the solution determines the solubility of the protein molecules. So by now you all must be aware that the protein molecules are composed of amino acid residues which vary in their properties because of the R groups which they possess, and these R groups are categorized into hydrophobic, hydrophilic ones, then positively charged or negatively charged. They may be polar, and it is these variable properties which in turn affect the amino acids and further to the proteins, and these also impart special characters to the protein moieties. So what happens at different pHs? So if you remember, we spoke about pi, or that is the isoelectric point. An isoelectric point is what? It is the pH at which the net charge on the residue, on the amino acid residue, is zero, or on the protein molecule the net charge is zero. So what happens when the pH of the solution is above pi, or it is equal to pi, or it is below pi? Okay, so if pH is greater than pi, or if the pH of the solution is greater than the isoelectric point, then what happens? The surface of the protein molecule, which is majorly composed of the hydrophobic ones, they are the surface is the surface is predominantly of the hydrophilic ones, while the interior core is of the hydrophobic ones. So the surface of the molecule is predominantly negatively charged when the pH is greater than pi, and then at this condition, because the surface is negatively charged, and you all must be aware that like charges repel each other while unlike charges attract each other. So if the surface is negatively charged, so like negatively charged molecules, if there are negatively charged molecules, they will repel each other. Okay, similarly, when the pH is below pi, when the pH is less than pi, then what happens? The surface, it is the opposite, it is the reverse. So the surface is predominantly positively charged, and again over here, like charges, positively charged molecules, they will repel each other. But what happens if pH is equal to pi? What happens then? Because if when pH is equal to Pi, and at Pi the net charge on the molecule is 0, so overall the surface contains no charge. So it is neutral, because the positive and negative charges, they cancel out each other on the amino acid residues and overall on the protein molecule. So at pH, when pH is equal to Pi, the net charge on the molecule is 0. The net charge on the protein molecule is 0, and in that condition, in this condition, what happens? The hydrophobic repulsion, the repulsion, like charges repulsion, that phenomena is absent. However, there may be attraction of attraction, there may be attractive interaction among the neighboring molecules and may lead to precipitation. And because this happens at isoelectric point, because this happens at isoelectric point and the precipitation is occurring at Pi, so it is also known as, the phenomena is also known as isoelectric precipitation. It is also known as isoelectric precipitation. The next point we'll discuss, which affects the solubility, the second point is the ionic strength. So what is the effect of ionic strength on the solubility of the protein molecules? So the solubility of the protein molecules at low ionic strength generally increases with increasing salt concentration. So why? This process is known as salting in. Means if you are increasing the concentration of the salt or the ions in the solution, then the solubility of the protein is increasing. So at low ionic strength, if the solution in which the protein molecules are dissolved, if that particular solution has low ionic strength and we keep on adding more ions or more salts in it, then under those conditions the solubility of the protein molecules, it increases, and the phenomena is known as salting in. Means adding salts leading to increased in the solubility of the protein molecule. So that is called salting in. And why it occurs? Why the solubility of the protein increases upon addition of the salts? Because it is due to the because these salt ions, they bind to the ionizable side chains of the amino acid residues which are present on the protein molecules, and decreases the interaction between oppositely charged groups and water molecules. Then water molecules, they surround these interactions, these solvation spheres around these groups, and thus enhances the solubility of the proteins. While what happens after a certain point of time, after a certain salt concentration, then the solubility again decreases, and that is known as salting out. So it is the salting in, or this addition of salt, which increases the solubility of the protein, is only up to a certain specific concentration. Beyond that concentration, beyond that ionic strength, beyond that particular concentration of the salts, if we add more salts to that particular solution, then again the solubility of those protein molecules, they decline, and that phenomena is known as salting out. And why this occurs? Because after a certain point of time, addition of large amount of salts, it leads to the precipitation. And why precipitation? Because because there occurs because the solvation layer which the water molecule forms, that there is a large amount of electrostatic repulsion among the molecules, because there are a lot of ions concentrated within a solution, and there are a lot of ions, and there are oppositely charged ions, positive and negative charges both are present. Larger number of ions, if they are present within a particular solution, then the salt ions, water these ions, they cause the removal of the solvation layer, they cause the removal of the water molecules, and ultimately it leads to the precipitation and decreases the solubility of the proteins, and that is known as salting out. So this is how the ionic strength determines the solubility of the proteins. Effect of the solvent, how the solvent affects the solubility of the proteins. So the third point is effect of solvents. So there are different kinds of solvents which are like organic or inorganic. So organic solvents, for example acetone or ethanol, what they do, they cause a decline in the dielectric constant of the aqueous solution. So what they do, they cause a decrease in the dielectric, they cause a decrease in the dielectric constant of the aqueous solution. And then what happens if the dielectric constant is reduced? Then upon dielectric when the dielectric constant is reduced, then two proteins come close through electrostatic force of attraction, which ultimately leads to precipitation. So what happens, these organic solvents, by decreasing the dielectric constant, they also decrease the solubility of the proteins and ultimately leads to their precipitation in from the aqueous solution. So these are some of the factors which affect the solubility of the proteins. Now next we come to the classification of proteins, how these protein molecules are classified. These proteins, they are giant molecules, and how these molecules are categorized into different groups based on certain classifying features. So classification of proteins. So first is these protein molecules, they are grouped into simple or conjugated proteins. Okay, so what is the criteria? So the criteria for this type of classification is on the into simple and conjugated. The criteria is on the basis of their composition. On the basis of composition, these protein molecules, they are classified into simple proteins or conjugated proteins. And what are they? The simple proteins are the ones which contain only, so these contain, okay, I'll write it over here. So the simple proteins, they contain only amino acid. So if the protein molecules, they are composed of just amino acids, nothing else, amino acid residue. So when the amino acids are connected via peptide bond and then they fold into various types of configurations and nothing else is involved, then that is known as simple proteins. For example, the example of simple protein is serum albumin. Okay, but what are conjugated proteins? Now, what are conjugated proteins? Conjugated proteins are the ones where some non-protein component or non-amino, other than amino acid residues, if certain other things are involved or are associated with the to form a complex, then that is known as conjugated proteins. So conjugated proteins are proteins or protein molecules or amino acid residues plus non-protein component. Certain non-protein component, it may be lipids or carbohydrates or certain metal ions. So that they are non-protein component, and those are known as conjugated proteins. Okay, so these conjugated proteins, the examples are glycoproteins, where the non-protein component is glucose, carbohydrates. Then there are phosphoproteins, where the non-protein component is phosphate groups. Then there are lipoproteins, where the non-protein components are the lipid molecules, metalloproteins. So these are conjugated proteins, which are composed of amino acid residues or the protein component plus the non-protein component. So there is protein component plus non-protein component, which make up a conjugated protein. Okay, and then this non-protein component is also known as prosthetic, a prosthetic group. And when the part of the conjugated protein without its prosthetic group, so just the protein component of a conjugated protein component is known as a holo enzyme. Okay, sorry, holo enzyme, sorry, I'm sorry, it is known as apoprotein. So the protein component plus non-protein component of prosthetic group, they collectively form the conjugated protein. And the part of the protein component of a conjugated protein, when it is not associated with its prosthetic group, then that is called as apoprotein. Okay, and apoprotein, so apoprotein plus prosthetic group, it is known as holoprotein. Alright, so conjugated protein is also known as holoproteins, and some of the examples of these conjugated proteins are glycoproteins, where the prosthetic group is carbohydrate moieties. Then we have lipoproteins, where the prosthetic group is lipids. Phosphoproteins, where the prosthetic group is phosphate groups. Metalloproteins, then we have metalloproteins. So these are some of the categories of conjugated proteins, which vary in their prosthetic groups. So here it is carbohydrate molecules, lipoproteins, lipid molecules, phosphoproteins, phosphate, metalloproteins. The prosthetic group is a metal. Alright, so glycoproteins are generally present on the cell surface. For example, fibronectin is one example of glycoproteins. Alright, then for lipoproteins, we have high density HDL or chylomicron, etc. They are lipoproteins. Then for metalloproteins, we have ferritin, where the metal is iron. Sorry, I wrote over in this is ferritin. Various kinases or phosphatases, they are they are part of phosphoproteins, phosphatases. Alright, so these are some of the examples of conjugated proteins. Now the next criteria for classifying the proteins is the criteria for this type of classification, where the proteins are classified into fibrous, these are classified into fibrous or globular proteins depending on the basis of their shape and on the basis of where the criteria is on the basis of shape and their solubility. So on the basis of shape and solubility, the proteins are classified into two types. They are fibrous proteins or globular proteins. So what are fibrous proteins? So we have two groups. We have fibrous proteins and we have globular proteins. So what are fibrous proteins? They are long rod shaped protein molecules. They are insoluble in water. They are physically tough. And so because they are tough, so they are the structural component. Okay, so because of their tough nature, so their structural component, and they also have protective function. And the example of fibrous protein is keratin, like which is that protein which is present in our hairs. So this is about fibrous proteins. They are long, rod shaped, they are insoluble in water, and they are tough. Whereas the globular proteins, they are spherical. They are not long, but they are compact. They are spherical in shape and they are soluble in water. Okay, so this is the difference between on the basis of which they are categorized into two different groups, on the basis of solubility and on the basis of their shape. So these fibrous proteins are rod shaped, whereas the globular ones are spherical. On the basis of solubility, the fibrous ones are insoluble in water, whereas globular proteins, they are soluble in water. And yeah, so this is about fibrous and globular proteins. And in case of globular proteins, the hydrophobic residues, because these proteins are the globular proteins, they are soluble in water. So the hydrophobic amino acid residues, they are present in on the inner side of the proteins, and on the surface of the proteins the hydrophilic residues are present, so that the hydrophobic ones, there is minimal contact with water, otherwise they will repel the water molecule, and that the solubility will be affected. So in order to make the molecule soluble, the protein molecule, the polypeptide chain is folded in such a way that the hydrophobic ones, they are buried deep inside to avoid their contact with water, while the hydrophilic ones, they lie on the surface of the proteins. They form hydrogen bonds with water and stabilize the molecules and also imparts solubility. So this is about the classification of the proteins. Now we come to now we'll talk about the function of the proteins overall on a wide scale, very general function. What are the various functions which these proteins perform? So we'll talk about the functions of the proteins in general. What are the various types of functions which these proteins perform? So functions of proteins. So first, they are the structural component. They form the structure. So for example, the class of fibers, for example, collagen, okay, keratin. So they are the structural components. So this is the first major task performed by the proteins. Then the second one is they are involved in the metabolism. So they those proteins which are involved in metabolism, they generally belong to the enzymatic classes. And for example, there are lysozymes, polymerases, there are polymerases enzymes, there are kinases. So these enzymes, they are basically proteinaceous in nature, and when this we'll discuss when we'll talk about enzymes in detail. They are proteinaceous in nature, so basically they are performing metabolic functions. These protein molecules, which the enzymes which are proteinaceous in nature, they are performing metabolic activities, be it part of anabolism or catabolism. So they are performing various kinds of metabolic reactions within our body, which is very essential for the survival. So these are this is another important function of the proteins. Then the third function about proteins is the membrane transport, because all the biological cells, or even within the cells, even within the eukaryotic cells, there are membrane bound organelles, and each organelle performs specific functions. And there are certain protein molecules which are transported from one organelle to the other, or from one cell type to the other, and they have to cross the membrane. So there are certain channel proteins or porins. So there are channel proteins which aid in the which aid or which facilitate the transport of specific type of protein molecules from one compartment to the other, or from one cell type to the other, so that they can perform their specific task. So this is another important function of the molecule of proteins, that they are involved in the transport, membranous transport through channel proteins or through porins. Now the fourth function which these proteins perform, the fourth function which these protein performs is in the cell recognition. These cell recognition. So how they are involved in cell recognition is that there are certain specific proteins which are present on the outer membrane, or on the cell membranes, and these proteins, they act as you can say they act as markers for that particular cell type. So they are involved in cell recognition. So if a particular protein is present on the cell membrane, then it is defined as that particular cell type. So if a protein A is present on, say, stomach cells, or stomach cells, and protein B is present on kidney cells, so then these protein A and protein B, they are if they are involved in cell recognition, so identification of the cells, whether a given cell is a part of kidney cell or a stomach cell, can be identified using those signature proteins. So that is, they are involved in cell recognition. Now the fifth one is in the osmotic regulation. So osmotic regulation, so they maintain the osmolytic balance. They maintain the osmolytic balance within the cell cytoplasm. So they for example, the proteins which are involved in osmotic regulation, they are like albumin. Then the next the next important function is the regulation of gene action. So how these protein molecules, they regulate gene action is by so when we'll go on to genetics, molecular genetics, we'll study how gene regulation occurs, and there are certain repressors and promoters and repressor proteins which affect the gene expression. So either they promote the set of genes for their transcription and further translation, or they inhibit the transcription and translation of a set of genes. So those are, so say for example, repressors or promoters, they are specific proteins which bind to the operator region, and when we'll study about the gene structure of a gene, we'll get into the details of about what are operators, what are promoters, what are regulators, what are repressors. So basically these repressors and promoters, they are basically proteins which either inhibit a set of genes or they promote a set of genes to for their transcription and then translation. So the next one is, then another important function is in the regulation of body function. Regulation of body function. Say for example, which hormones. So say thyroid hormones, there are various hormones which are present, which are excreted by our body, and they performs, although the quantity is very less, but they perform very important functions. So these hormones, they are also proteinaceous in nature. So basically this is all about this. Here we have spoken about, where we have discussed about the functions of proteins in general. So this is all about today's lecture. Please thanks for watching the video, and please like and subscribe to the channel, share among your friends, and go through the reference books, because now the exam date has been announced. So work hard, prepare well, and stay tuned for more videos. Thank you.